It's always technology that changes the world, and the world, it's changing. And it makes sense. It makes sense the world changing as fast as it is because the rate of technological growth is also accelerating. It's gone parabolic. But technology is a tool. And that tool of technology can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And while you and I, we want it for the good. We want it for the convenience. We want it for the efficiency that the technology brings. Unfortunately, governments look to the technology as a tool for surveillance and control. So in this show, I'm going to break down some of the latest news that happened this week, outlining this massive shift and the battle that's up ahead. We're going to cover what happened with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency this week, including new developments and attacks from the government. We're going to recap what the Federal Reserve meeting had, what the economy is looking like, policymakers' comments, you don't want to miss if you want to know where the economy is going. We're going to talk about digital IDs, what governments are imposing them, how they're coming, and we're going to look at the government overreach, and we're going to see how they're doing it right before our various. This week we saw on Halloween Day, October 31st, was the anniversary, the 15th anniversary of Bitcoin's white paper being published. So Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency, the greatest tool that we have for freedom, in my opinion, the freedom to transact, was introduced in a white paper. So it was a piece of paper, not a piece of paper, but a PDF that was published on a message board by Satoshi Nakamoto on October 31st. Now, since that time, we've seen Bitcoin rise up. It's sprouted an entire industry. It's now one of the most talked about subjects in the government. Obviously, one of my most talked about subjects as well. And it's valued at over $500 billion, and it looks like it's continued to go. Now, a couple interesting things about this. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, they were, used some interesting things in some of the dates and numbers and symbology. So, for example, October 31st, 2008. Why October 31st, 2008? Well, what we do know is that it was the exact same day that Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the church door, 500 years before. I don't know the exact date, I didn't do the math, but about 500 years earlier. So what is the significance of that? Well, you have to understand during that Protestant Reformation, back in the about 1500s, the church and the state was the form of government. It was a very centralized power, central control, central planned economy, controlled by the church and the state. And at the time, the church and state working together to impose their laws, and they controlled through controlling the narrative. So they, the church and state, told the people that they had to listen to what they had to say about religion, about God, about the Bible, and that the only way to get to God and to get to heaven was through the church and doing all the acts that they told you to do and all the chivalry and all these things that they had. Well, there was a piece of technology that was invented, I think about 70 years before, called the printing press. I talk about this all the time. And they printed the Bible. When the people got the Bible, they read it and said, wait a minute, this is not what you've been telling us. The Bible tells us that we don't need to go through you. We can have our own path. We don't need a central plan, a central gatekeeper. We can now go direct, decentralized, peer-to-peer to God. You have to understand the importance of this. So we're breaking this central power, this gatekeeper that we had to go through to God. And now through the Bible, we said, no, we go direct, okay? And really what Martin Luther did when he nailed the 95 Theses to the church door was he disintermediated the power of the church and state, the centralization of that. And that's sort of what happened with the Bitcoin white paper. The Bitcoin white paper was put up in the same way. So in the white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto talked about many times taking away the need for the central administrators, right? So he talks about how the internet grew, but the internet was taken over and was centralized. And so everything on the internet required gatekeepers. So for example, we have to go through Google or we have to go through Facebook or Amazon, things like that. Those are gatekeepers. But more importantly, the money became centralized. So if I want to send you money, and we didn't have Venmo and PayPal back when Satoshi wrote this paper. Well, we did have PayPal. We didn't have Venmo, I don't think. But if we want to send money over the internet, it has to go through central gatekeepers. So if I want to send you money even on Venmo, or I want to pay you on your website, that's going to go through my credit card. My credit card goes to my bank. My bank goes to your bank, right? So there's multiple gatekeepers in the middle of that. And so Satoshi Nakamoto invented a way for us to transact digitally peer-to-peer without the need for a central administrator, for a third-party central administrator. And so he disintermediated the power of the central bank or of the bank's central power. And no longer do we need to go to the central power in order to have access. We don't need the gatekeeper anymore, just like Martin Luther said, we don't need the power of the gatekeeper of the church. Now we can go peer-to-peer, just like Martin Luther said we can go peer-to-peer to God. Now, Satoshi Nakamoto said, now we can go peer-to-peer and send money between us. Very, very important. So in light of this 15th anniversary, I thought we'd just bring that up. It's an interesting fact. Now, there was also some big news that I saw this week that I'm pretty excited about. Now, you might not have heard of a company called Bakkt, B-A-K-K-T. You might not have heard of that, but you might have heard the parent company. So Bakkt was founded, and it's majority owned by a Fortune 500 company called Intercontinental Exchange. And you might not have heard of that company either, even though, again, they're a Fortune 500 company. But what you might know is that it's the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. You might have heard of that before. The NYSE, of course you have. It's the largest stock exchange, right? So you've heard of the NYSE. It's owned by Intercontinental Exchange, and they also own this company called Bakkt. Now, they created the New York Stock Exchange to trade stocks, and they created Bakkt to trade cryptocurrencies. It's a pretty big deal. This is a legitimate player. Now, Bakkt has been around for a number of years, and they've been trying to implement some new things, and it's important to understand these companies from very key players in this institutional space and what they're doing. And they've been building through this bear market because they're in it for a long term. So what do they do? Well, first of all, what do they do? So they offer custody. So they offer institutional grade custody. So it's cool for me and you. If you have some Bitcoin, you should definitely not keep it on exchange, put it onto your own wallet. But if you're institutional grade, it's a different level that you need, and they offer that. But let's talk about what they did. So what they did is they created a new service on Lightning. So Lightning is a layer 2 on Bitcoin that allows you to send money almost free and almost instant. And what they've done is they built out a new program that allows their clients to send money globally, interoperably, instantly, and almost for free using something unique called a UMA, a Universal Money Address. And it allows them to send money cross-border or do business-to-business settlement, almost instantaneous, almost free, over the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Now, what's important about this is that what they said in this release is you shouldn't have to be a Bitcoin enthusiast to get the benefits of using Bitcoin. What does that mean? It says you don't even have to own Bitcoin. Much like Gmail users don't need to understand how the protocol that powers email, SMTP, works, mainstream users should not need to understand Bitcoin or how Lightning works. So, right? You don't know how SMTP works, but yet you use Gmail every day. So you don't need to know how Bitcoin or Lightning works to use the benefits of it. They say these are the protocols that should be abstracted away from everyday users, at least initially, while still delivering significantly more value to other options. Our clients and their customers need not know or care that Bitcoin is being used under the hood. They also do not need to hold Bitcoin. We take care of the transaction logistics on the network for them. Bitcoin becomes a money transmission protocol that enables fiat to fiat transfers, Bitcoin optional. So they say senders can send dollars and receivers can receive in pesos in seconds. So they're using Bitcoin network and Lightning to transfer money instantaneously anywhere in the world, almost for free. And I can send dollars, you can receive in pesos, and you don't ever have to know about Bitcoin or Lightning. That's a really big deal. Technology is moving at the pace, and this is the change that needs to take it to mainstream adoption. I want to tell you about my friend Dutch Mendenhall. I've been talking about him for a while. He's the co-founder and CEO of Rad Diversified. He's the president of Alternative Investment Association, and he's bringing an investment summit, an investment wealth summit to Tampa, Florida, December 1st through the 3rd. Tucker Carlson's going to be there. He's going to be in attendance with Buck Sexton and many more. So if you want to learn how to create financial freedom and security for your future, then you need to be at this Investment Wealth Summit. You can get your tickets at investmentwealthsummit.com today. Dutch Mendenhall, he's a visionary leader, right? He's big in the real estate investing space, the author of the best-selling book, Money Shackles. He grew a $200 million real estate portfolio from scratch. And so come check out Dutch Mendenhall. Come check out Tucker Carlson. Like I said, radio, television host Buck Sexton, Lisa Booth, Amy Vaughn, many more. Tickets are going to sell out for sure. Get your tickets at investwealthsummit.com today. Come down, see Dutch, see Tucker, see Buck Sexton, see Lisa Booth, expand your investment horizons, secure your financial future, secure your seat at investwealthsummit.com today. This week we saw big news came out of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. There was a big meeting this week, and basically the Fed decided to leave rates unchanged again. They paused in September, and sort of as expected, they decided to leave those rates paused again. Now, there was a lot of talk about what's going on because inflation still hasn't really been caught. It hasn't really been brought under control. You're hearing from some of the headlines that maybe it's been there. Jerome Powell is saying that maybe we've done enough. We'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see. Their goal is to get inflation back down to 2%. But they don't know if they've got there yet. So they're saying that maybe there will be some more raises, but we don't know. But here's the problem. They're raising rates in order to bring inflation down, supply and demand, right? So what they're hoping is that if they can make you and I poor, if they can make us broke, then that will slow the demand side down. You and I will be buying less things. There will be less demand for goods. And if there's less demand for goods, the price will come down. That's what they hope. But here's the problem. They can only affect that side. Now, we could get the supply side up, but they can't affect that either. So they can crush the demand. But here's the problem. Most of the demand in the U.S. economy today is not coming from you and I. It's not coming from individual people. It's not coming from us buying too much. Most of it is now coming from the government. The U.S. Treasury Department is spending like a drunken sailor, and they're driving the market. So even if the Fed were to drive unemployment up to 10% and make us all broke, it would only reduce the amount of spending by so much because the majority of the spending is coming from the government side. Now, there's also some other data within the consumer side spending. So, for example, the baby boomer generation is the largest segment of the population right now, and they're going to die soon. I hate to be so blunt, but they're at the end of their career, the end of their life, if you will. And these baby boomers have a lot of wealth, tens of trillions, I think over $60 trillion of wealth. Now, some of them might want to pass a good chunk of it down to their heirs, and a lot of them might just want to spend it. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So we're seeing a massive amount of spending coming from the baby boomers. And really, no matter how much the Fed raises rates to try to make us broke, these people are going to spend the money. So we sort of have this dynamic in the consumers that are going to continue to spend, but we also have this dynamic of the Treasury Department wanting to continue to spend. And spend they are. As a matter of fact, it's not enough to have one war. Now we want to have two wars, in addition to funding all of this ESG, renewable EV nonsense we talked about in the first section. Billions of dollars literally getting lit on fire. Now we're fighting a war in Russia, Ukraine, $100 billion plus over there. Now we're in the Middle East, and Janet Yellen says, certainly we have enough money to fight two wars, and maybe we'll fight 3 or 4 wars if we want to go to China and Taiwan as well. And we're seeing it in the data. As a matter of fact, just this week, we saw the Treasury Department said it will be looking to borrow on another $776 billion in the last 3 months of 2023. And $816 billion in the first 3 months of 2024. What does that mean? Well, they need to borrow the money, which means they don't have it. They don't have it, which means they're spending money they don't have. That's deficit spending. So, again, the government can't give something they haven't taken, so they're taking your tax money and they're spending it. But they're spending more than the tax money they bring in. It's pretty simple, right? But it's simple, but it's big. So the government basically projects what their deficit will be. Here's how much money we'll need to borrow for the next quarter. The problem is that every time they project they need to borrow a certain amount of money, it comes out to be more. And so they need to borrow another $776 billion in the last 3 months of 2023 and $800 billion. So we're looking at $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. Now, Fed Chair Jerome Powell might be done raising interest rates, but that doesn't mean rates won't continue to rise. Why is that? That's because the U.S. government has been borrowing so much money. They need to borrow $1.5 trillion moving forward, but they borrowed $1 trillion last quarter alone. And they're going to continue to need more and more money, and they're going to have to continue to pay higher rates thanks to the Fed. Why thanks to the Fed? What do you mean? If the Fed doesn't raise rates, why do they have to pay higher rates? Because as of right now, the Fed is not buying treasuries. They're supposedly tightening. And so if they're not buying them, then who's buying them? So we don't have enough buyers, but the Treasury continues to need to do it. So in order to get more buyers, the rates will have to go up. Now, they could be secretly buying it, but we don't know. There's a fun fact that you may not be aware of, that the Federal Reserve has never been audited. And as a matter of fact, it was really what kind of woke me up and brought me into even where I'm at today, which was Ron Paul running the End the Fed campaign. I think it was around 2008, 2009. In the Fed, Ron Paul's son, Senator Rand Paul, has been pushing this Audit the Fed bill for a while, and he's back this week pushing an amendment to a major spending bill that would finally bring the Fed into an audit. Maybe. We'll see. He's been trying to do this for a long time, and of course, they don't want to do that. So we'll see where this goes. But if this could finally be the piece, could we finally audit the Fed to see what would happen, where all the money went? That he wants to use prevailing accounting standards to figure out where the billions and trillions are coming from, and more importantly, where they're going. Now, the question I would ask is, if we audit the Fed, what do we do with that data? What happens? It's an interesting question, but at least it would bring it to the forefront. Most of us already know, what we already know is that the Federal Reserve is the center of the problem. They are the one causing all of these problems, not just with unaffordability. I mean, housing, cars, food, etc. We're not affording to live, but even to the endless wars. If they don't continue printing money, how do we continue to fight in Ukraine and Israel and every other place that we're fighting? So the Federal Reserve really is at the center of all of these problems, and so it would be good to get to the bottom of it. So, for example, the Fed told us they spent about $1.2 trillion after 2008 to bail out the economy, and a FOIA request that came out last year looks like it was about 28 trillion. Not 1 trillion, but 28 trillion. Where did that 28 trillion go? Well, it goes in somebody's pocket. I mean, sure, it went to some company to buy something, but it went into that company's pocket. It went into somebody's pocket. It's what Frederick Bastiat, the author of the book called The Law, which if you haven't read it, you should. He dubs it a term called legal plunder. And that means basically through grift and graft that we legally impose, we can extract money out of the government. Now, Rand Paul wants this Government Accountability Office to fully audit transactions for or with foreign central banks as well. Because it's not just the U.S. companies, governments that are getting money, it's also foreign governments that are getting that money as well. And so we have to see what that is. But of course, the Fed doesn't want it. We'll see if this showdown comes to a head. I'm rooting for it. Christine Lagarde, head of the European Central Bank, came out with a big announcement. That shouldn't have been a big surprise. I've been talking about for a long time, that the digital euro, the CBDC, is advancing, and it's now in the preparation phase. Now, I always like to mention that Christine Lagarde is a criminal, a convicted criminal, when she worked at the IMF, and now she's running the European Central Bank. But she's basically ripped the Band-Aid off, if you will, saying that enough talking, here it is. She released a 1-minute video in which she announced that a digital euro has officially entered what she calls, again, the preparation phase. Now, this is a central bank digital currency. I've talked about these ad nauseum. It's a digital money, which, I think somewhere about 80% of all transactions are done digitally anyway. I don't want this. I think it's the last piece the governments need to enact their authoritarian grip on us. But even knowing that, I still just don't use a lot of cash. I still use my debit cards, my credit cards, wire transfers, things like that. So we already have digital money. But a central bank digital currency is obviously so much more than I talk about all the time. It's not just digital money, it's programmable money. And because it's programmable, they can build rules into it to do certain things. So, for example, if they don't want you eating red meat, you've You've gone over your red meat allotment, no more money. You can't buy that anymore. You've gone over your carbon allowance, no more gas for your car, no more plane tickets for you, anything like that. So they could program it, different races, different sexes, different identities, all these different things they could do. It could be very scary, very authoritarian. Now, of course, Ms. Lagarde, she assures the European citizens that that's not going to be the case. That's not going to be the case. She assures people that they will still have full control over their money and cash, because cash will remain available to those who choose to still use it. For now, of course, right? This is all part of a tactic. It's sort of the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water, right? You have to turn the heat up slowly, otherwise the frog's going to jump out. If they just took all the cash off the street, put the CBDCs in effect, and put total control lockdown, people are going to riot in the streets. But if they do it slowly, and they slowly introduce it, and they incentivize you to use it, probably just like they did in China. If you download the app, you're going to get whatever, $500, $1,000 of free money. I'll probably do it. If they're going to give me $1,000 of free money, I'll probably take it as well. And then the cash is still available, but then maybe the big bills go out of circulation, and then there's not as many bank branches or ATMs available, and over a period of time, it starts to disappear. Like I said, it's a tactic being used to people that are apprehensive about these things. If you're apprehensive about feeling like a sheep, a piece of cattle being herded into a digital monetary panopticon, then you have to be slow walked in. Now, in this preparation phase, it should be viewed as like a light nudging. It's a light nudging towards the normalization phase, during which we'll probably see a bombardment of propaganda, if you will, letting us know everywhere that the digital euro's here. It's an improvement. It's faster. It's cheaper. It's easier. It's more inclusive. They're going to tell us that, right? This allows more people to use it because you don't have to be able to have access to a bank. Now you can just do it from your phone. So it's more inclusive. It's better for everybody. What they think is that people want a digital money. What they fail to realize is we do want a digital money, but we don't want theirs. We want our own. Now, not only do European citizens have nothing to worry about, she said, but they should be excited to usher in this innovative technology to reap the benefits of increased efficiencies. Now, it's interesting that she says that, because a quote I've used of hers many times, a couple years ago, she said that innovation is a threat to our financial stability. That's what she said. Innovation is a threat to our financial stability. Now, what she was saying, and now she's saying that innovation technology allows us to reap the benefits of increased efficiencies. So what's going on here? What she was saying is that innovation is a threat to our financial stability. Innovation such as Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, innovation in the private market, innovation that allows you to have your own money on your own terms. That's a threat to us because you leave our system to a new system. Now what she's saying is innovation technology allows us to reap the benefits. If you use our innovation, if you use our technology, then we get the increased benefits of efficiencies, so they become more efficient. They can surveil you. They can control you much more efficiently. That's what the difference is here. It's a threat if you leave and go to their a decentralized, non-controlled system. But if you stay within our system, it's much better, and it increases our efficiencies to surveil and control you. Now, it's not just over there in the ECB we have to worry about. In Canada, our neighbors in the north, good old Justin Trudeau, is now threatening provincial premiers that he will cut off healthcare funding unless they agree to a digital ID. Now, this digital ID system will allow government to control every aspect of your life, right? Again, it's a choke point. If you're not allowed to do these things, they can just shut your ID off. Now, they claim that you're going to get healthcare. Like you can't get access to any healthcare unless you have the digital ID. Financial system. Well, you can't have a bank account or online transactions if you don't have a digital ID. Farmers can't get in stores if they don't have the digital ID. You can't book travel. You can't book airline tickets or train tickets if you don't have the ID. You're starting to get the idea. Of course, they also want it on social media platforms. No more fake accounts. They don't want you having an anonymous account because if you say mean things against the government, what they would consider bad, disinformation, and they want to know who you are. Just like in China, in order to get on the internet, you have to do a facial scan. They want the same thing. They don't want anonymous accounts. Of course, telecommunications, no internet without the digital ID, no phone without the digital ID. And it's not just Canada. It's happening all over the world. Bill Gates, he's at it again, of course. Bill Gates is now pushing digital IDs for newborns in Kenya, as critics warn of a surveillance risk. So, of course, it's Bill Gates, and of course, it's in Kenya. I feel bad for the people in Africa and India where Bill Gates always goes and does his experimental medications on them. We've seen countless examples of him sterilizing young girls and deaths and all types of things. It's horrific that he uses these types of people to push these agendas. But of course, there he is in Kenya now pushing this. According to the Kenyan Daily Post, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's role in assisting the Kenyan government in its development and rollout of a government-backed digital ID program. Series of